the world of the internet.
It can get a bit much sometimes.
I don't know. Pretty much, yeah.
Welcome to
Move Over Mother Teresa.
What is my purpose? What am I gonna contribute to the world?
Interviews with creators who
Show the world
give
vulnerability and masculinity.
Encourage consciousnness.
shit.
Can I swear?
Happy holidays, it's Christmas Eve and you know what that means. You're probably on your third, fourth, fifth dog walk of the day and that's okay, no shade. People need a bit of a break from their family and you also need some entertainment. So luckily, I have a bonus episode of Move Over Mother Teresa for you. I've pulled some clips that I couldn't stop thinking about from the 12 episodes that we've put out so far. And they all kind of came around the theme of do things the wrong way, do it differently, do it the hard way. And actually, it might benefit your life much better than convenience and thinking through your decisions. And who doesn't need a little bit of recklessness at Christmas? So if you are thinking about the past year or planning for the year ahead, this is the perfect time to watch or listen. This first clip is from DJ and author Elijah. He talks about how one decision doesn't move the needle that much. So actually say no for the sake of saying no, say yes for the sake of saying yes, say yes to things that you wouldn't say yes to originally and say no to things that you would really love to do, because that terrifies me and I put a lot of thought into every decision, but he says that it's really not going to change your life all that much.
There are things that you should do that maybe that don't instinctively talk to you. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But then there's things I'm like, okay, let me just try it. Let me do View from a Bridge. Like, why not? You know?
Which is great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And not think too much about it. But then I should also just, at the same time, just randomly say no to things, because I also think that that's kind of interesting in itself. Just being like, no, I don't get it. Or that's maybe like for someone else, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't think about that too much, because again, that becomes another bit of work that I have to work out. That's just not at the top of mind for me. But I can just kind of randomly, even though deciding to do this, I could have just been like, no.
Yeah.
No particular reason, but then I think in good faith, I could just be like, oh yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. So it's not really strategy, it's more like do and just see what comes of it.
Like, not every decision is like moving the needle that much. So it's not, I don't need to overthink this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe when you're starting out or you're in some position where maybe you've got responsibilities, you're representing a company, or you've got like some sort of image to uphold to other people, then fine. But I don't have that. Like, I'm not maximizing shareholder value here.
One of your squares is time is the creative director, and it feels like the creative director for you has evolved, and you have more time now, and you're really taking advantage of kind of contemplation and things that is a privilege to have, really. And I imagine in the first half of your career, it wasn't something that you could afford to sort of live by, right? It was just actually really taking time to be intentional and think. What's your advice to people for whom time is not a privilege?
Well, it's still a filter. So even I guess the first half of my career, I was going full tilt, and then I was learning fast through doing things and failing, and you know what I mean, and trying loads of things all at once. And that was good for where I was at that time and what needed to be done for the company, for the people that I was working with, and so forth. But today, more time hasn't made my work any better. You know what I'm saying? And there is this kind of like utopian vision of like, oh, I could just like get all the time to work on my magnum opus. It's like, well, actually, it might be easier to do that with very little time, because that's what you really want to do. So, okay, I've got a day job. I've only got an hour every couple of days to work on this thing. And then that is the filter, so you don't do loads of other stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I see this more and more where some of the most interesting artists I follow have day jobs, they have families, but they produce work at a pace that makes sense for their lifestyle. And that is sustainable to them, because they're like, well, I only have one day a week to work on this, and I'm going to make it good. I don't want to waste any time doing things that are not interesting to me, and I'm not going to waste your time because I know you're busy too. And you get like very very high tilt work, like just very like, okay, I'm going to be here on Mondays, every Monday, because that's the only time I've got. I think this is like a good thing. And even the beginning of this year, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to be an artist, or I'm going to just work on this stuff full time for a year. And we're now in October, and I've been like reasonably busy through most of the time. I needed like a bit of this writing time to slow down and work on some other things. But in 2026 and beyond, I could easily like have another full-time situation and do all of the creative projects in the evenings or when I have spare time. So it's just like having these, it is nice actually having little bits of break, especially because the apps can be quite all-consuming if you have to do it all the time. I try like not to recommend that for anyone, really. I think like that mix of some sort of full-time work or part-time work and this is like the sweet spot for most people.
What is a sort of a misconception, a common misconception you see about creatives or about the creative process?
Usually that some good things take time, and this idea of, okay, you know, like a classic album took 3 years to make, or this thing took 5 years to make, and that there's an element to that which is true, like the amount of like training and writing and reading and artist development, all that kind of stuff does take years, but it is years through like making and sharing, not making in some sort of closed box with no interface with the real world. And you know, the best-selling albums all the time, when you look at the recording times of them, they're really small. They're like 2, 3, 4 weeks. They're not months, years, because they're capturing some sort of energy or some sort of like, okay, yeah, the best-selling album of all time is Thriller, and it's like over, I think it's like 3 months of recording time. Obviously, we know what took to get to that point, both from Quincy Jones's and Michael Jackson's pedigree and all of the work they got to that point, but actually the capturing of the lightning in the bottle was really small. And I think the criticism of my own work, the Yellow Square work, really is that if I was able to compress that a bit tighter, the work would actually just resonate better. Like some things just took longer than I wanted them to. The book should have come out in 2024, and I would have been able to capture a bit more of the, not just the heat of the project, but like how, I guess, close I wrote the words. Like some of those things I wrote in 2021. And if like you're trying to speak about it 4 years later, where was your head was at? You're getting a story about where my head was at.
So would your advice be then to like creatives, just be sharing the work that you're making, even if it's WIP, even if it's like in process?
Obviously, it depends on what you're working on, but I find that you learn a lot more from like, not feedback in terms of someone think it's good or bad. I'm not interested in that. It's in terms of like what is resonating and what is like connecting with people. It's not like, people overrate people's opinions, I think, on things. Because the easy, say, like, feedback I could get from my work is like, oh, the drawing's not that good or it's not aligned properly. That's like, who cares? It's the ideas. Is there something in there that's connecting, or the things that are magnetizing people to your work? It might be something that you don't even notice yourself. So I'll see this with like designers or flyer designers and stuff. They'll be like, there's something about the way they do things that gets them where they need to go quicker than the actual, you know, piece of work would have got them. So if they tried to, I don't know, do a gallery show of their pictures, they just wouldn't have worked. But they've made some amazing piece of work. The people like you guys will be like, oh my God, this artist is amazing. Boom, now we can platform you at a high level, and then the work can continue. You know what I mean?
This second clip is from a conversation about fashion and convenience with Lydia Bolton. Now, we all think, adding, like smoother processes to our lives will make them a lot better. But actually, what if injecting some inconvenience into our lives made the quality of our lives much better? What if it changed how we interact with the planet and with other people?
So the thing I'm most interested in is this thing called metabolic rift. So this gap between us as people and the things that sustain us. The loop is just broken. There's this big gap. We have no idea how our clothes are made. We have no idea where our food comes from. We have no idea, someone named something else, where our electronics are. Our electronics are put together.
Food comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a massive problem in fashion. And your content kind of speaks to that. So I'm curious about what you think of that issue in general.
Yeah, totally agree. I think like food, clothing, so many things that we consume, we have absolutely no idea about any of the process. I always feel like there needs to be like a little children's book about like where like an orange comes from, and then you see all of these stages, and then you maybe think differently about wasting it or like not eating it. Because I feel like that's just really clear. But then yes, same with our clothing. We don't know kind of like the cotton is like a crop which is grown, it's a very water intensive crop. It's so often picked by hand, and then we just see a t-shirt that's say like £3, buy it and think nothing of it, and it's just like that's just one tiny stage. And then it's like the cotton being spun, the fabric being dyed, again, loads of water waste and chemicals in the dyeing process, which then affects obviously so many communities and everyone downstream of the river as well. And then the factories of how the clothing is made, the workers, then the freight of the clothing being transported to all the different countries, then it being packed, processed, shipped out. And then it's £3 and we don't care, we don't have a connection with it. Maybe wear it, maybe don't. And then chuck it away. And then it goes shipped out to another country, sits in someone else's land and pollutes their world.
It's interesting. I used to work on a farm and I remember I'd have to do these tours, a city farm in London. It's not, and I'd have to bring these kids in and give them a tour of the farm and just say to them, these chickens are where you get your chicken nuggets from. And the kids would be like, what do you mean? Like,
Imagine how the chicken felt hearing that news.
This is very rude. So, it's interesting because we consume, but we don't really see the consequences of our actions. And I think I like to think of it as the cost of convenience. Like everything is so easy. Our rubbish is picked up for us on a Thursday. Our, even as a country, we ship our waste out to another country and it sits on their beaches and pollutes their waters and, kills their people. And I think if we had more inconvenience in our life, if we had to dispose of our own rubbish, if we had to repair our own clothes every time,
Pick our own fruit.
Kill our own animals if you want to eat them, we would think more carefully about the production process. We would find a way to reduce waste. We would find a way we would have the skills that we need to survive. But ultimately, it's, I just think it's the cost of convenience that we have made this bed that we now have to lie on.
Yeah.
But don't you think that is the only thing that can be sold now in capitalism is convenience? Because we have everything, almost everything we could probably ever need. And actually the updated everything is just becoming more convenient. Now you can get items delivered to your door in 15 minutes. You could buy a bottle of wine. Now you can book your trains on Uber. That's the way that capitalism is like pushing the world. It's just like, ultimate convenience. I don't know where we will go next. Will we be carried to the office,
It's like
via
WALL-E.
a
Have
machine?
you guys seen that film? Where everybody's,
So scary.
everybody's in those floating chairs and they drink their meals and they stare at the TV all the time and it's so convenient because they go from, you just press a button and it takes you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Everything kind of becomes a little bit transactional, you know what I mean? And I've noticed it bleed out into loads of other areas of life, like not just fashion, but I have a few friends who use dating apps and there's so much choice. It's like sausages at a meat market. Like but you're picking on really, you don't meet these people in person. You're not choosing for a particular reason. And I just find that everything has become very transactional. And I find that part of all of this quite depressing because I don't see this as just like a fashion problem where we have so much choice and there's like 100, 300 new styles that come out every year from a particular brand instead of having, what they called seasonal collections and moving slower. I just see it bleed out into every part of life. And I just find it really sad because how do we go from we then have to move to inconvenience because you have to meet people in person or you have to pick from a seasonal collection. You might not have something you want in there or whatever else it may be. So it really is, to me, just inconvenience is the other choice. And do you see there being another solution?
I feel like you'll know about this. Isn't there like study and data on like how actually more choice doesn't make you happier?
Yeah, the paradox of choices. Yeah.
And actually how you think more choice, you've got more options, but actually less choice is better.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I sit in front of the sandwich aisle at Sainsbury's and just have a panic attack because there's too much choice.
Always go for
on
so
Netflix.
Netflix.
How often do you sit there?
And it's been 30 minutes.
I reckon if you could look at my Netflix usage, you would see I spend more time searching than I do watching something.
Yeah, and when we only had 5 channels, I, always could find Home and Away to watch.
Yeah.
It was much easier.
Twice a day.
Exactly.
You're right though, Mira. This does speak to a psyche, like a group think that has evolved as to like our need for lots and more of lots. And so this is why it's such a fascinating little area you work. Amazing big area you work in, Lydia, because the mindset you're trying to shift actually speaks to the very nature of who we've become. rather than appreciating things over time and respecting and understanding what is enough rather than what is this thing called more.
Yeah.
You know, you're really challenging, again, like I think who we have become over the last couple of decades, right?
Yeah, I think also that I've thought about that, like when you look at fashion brands, the way they've grown is just based off an unsustainable model. So actually, how can you grow but not in that always needing more? And like, is there a way to grow a business that isn't just about like increasing volume, but like, can you grow differently? But yeah, it is hard. And there's lots of things like maybe if growth, how is growth measured? Kind of like donut growth and degrowth and all of that, I think is really interesting. Like maybe if growth wasn't measured by increase, but maybe by value or by how little impact you make, that would be interesting. I don't know if we're quite there, but I think it's about individuals taking that on, and then that obviously like spills out.
This third clip is from a conversation with Rory Bradshaw about masculinity. He talks about how certain masculine traits are celebrated by other men, but if you don't perform masculinity in those ways, sure, you might get rejected in the short term. Sure, it might make relationships harder in the short term. But in the long term, there are much healthier and more positive ways to exhibit masculinity.
There's a Simone de Beauvoir quote that I really like, which is, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. And I think there's a similar thing for men, right? We're born and then we learn how to perform sex, and it's rehearsed until it feels real. And so I wanted to ask you, what is that version of masculinity that you think men are taught to perform? And if you don't think that was a great starting question.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good. Nice quote.
Thank you.
I guess there's nuance to it depending on, you know, your race, your heritage, you know, the area you grew up in, all those influences. But there's kind of a sort of global, seemingly like mainstream thread of masculinity that's most celebrated, and it tends to be the men that are in positions of power, the CEOs, the politicians, you know. And I find that those guys exhibit certain quite traditional traits of masculinity, being, you know, strong-willed and terrible at listening, and quite kind of forceful, aggressive, competitive, and so on. And I suppose the problem becomes as a man, if you're growing up, and those are the kind of celebrated heroes that you see around you that you're kind of told are successful, and you don't quite click with them, you're kind of left a bit stuck unless you have other examples in your close circle or online maybe nowadays where you can kind of think, oh, actually there are other ways of showing up as a man which are also successful, like which are also a kind of healthy and positive performance of it. But I don't think men tend to think about it that much. It's kind of like, maybe when I'm now obviously doing the work I do, I've paused and I've stopped and I've like reflected, but a lot of it's kind of, it just unfolds as you get older and you're not really thinking about it, but all you really see is like, okay, I've probably got, you know, one or two guys I really look up to, whether you like to admit it or not, and you probably want to like orientate yourself towards them.
How in those early like formative years are you subtly moulded into this particular form of a man?
I suppose it's, you kind of realise that there's that thread of masculinity you need to fit into anytime you try and step outside of it. So it could be at school when maybe you try wearing a slightly different colour of top that's maybe beyond black, grey or blue. And then someone's like, what's that all about? You know, and then you kind of retreat back in, you know.
Isn't it funny? It's such a tiny thing, but it's so significant.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like the music you listen to. Or for example, I remember when I was at primary school and I just, my mum had bought me Baywatch Ken. And like Baywatch Ken was like my favourite toy. I absolutely loved him. And, you know, he was fun, he was cool. He would go to the beach, you know, and play with the dolphins and stuff. But he was an action man. And so I took him into school and was like showing him off and stuff. And I thought, you know, yeah, like, great, love it. And then some of the other boys were like, not sure about this guy. And then I kind of held it in all day and was like really embarrassed, and I didn't sort of know what to do with what they said to me. And I got home, and just as I was falling asleep, my mum said to me, are you sure you're okay? And then I just burst into tears and was like, someone said Ken was stupid. And didn't bring him in again, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, even as a kid, I was playing with my sister's Polly Pocket, you know, toys and stuff.
Polly Pocket,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Me too.
good. But I wouldn't, you know, I learned that I keep that at home, I keep that quiet. The great thing about growing older is you can end up finding and placing yourselves in environments where you're more able to like bring your full authentic self to it. And I think for me as like a straight white man, it's like I can get by in the world like day to day, fairly okay being like more or less like the version of myself I need to be. And, you know, there's also different versions of ourselves. You know, I spend part of my week in prison and then part of it, you know, doing something like this with you guys, and then part of it at home with my wife and so on. And I'm always a slightly different like shade of masculinity in all those versions in order to like connect with those people, but it's still me. But it was interesting. It was kind of revealed to me recently. I run a men's community, and one of the biggest bits of feedback I get is from gay men who attend, and they describe how it's so unusual for them to be hanging out with straight guys doing a shared activity like a hike or a yoga class or whatever, and not feeling threatened. And it kind of exhibits...
It's confronting as well,
yeah.
that truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It says a lot about the world and how it's set up.
Yeah, exactly. For like a certain type of way of showing up as a man, that it's literally threatening to like someone else based on their experiences. So the safety of the environment, I think, is like above all what's important.
Nobody wants to get rejected. Nobody wants to be judged by other people. In fact, we all feel like there are 1,000 eyes on us all the time. But Sophie Jones goes out and she tries to get rejected every single day. What if you did that too? What if you did awkward stuff, weird stuff? What if you were loud in public and people looked at you weird and laughed with their friends? Could it actually improve your life?
Purposely putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation and not just running away from it, then it builds your resilience. Like even asking for a discount on a coffee, that used to make my skin crawl. And to be fair, it still would. But just asking for the discount and sitting in that discomfort and then realising that it doesn't matter what they think of me, it is what it is. It's just life-changing.
Do you know what this makes me think of? I read like a blog. The author was talking about how back in the day when our societies were really small, we were in villages and we only knew a few people. It really mattered that you liked me, and it really mattered that I liked you, because if you didn't like me, then maybe you wouldn't sell food to me. And if I didn't like you, then I wouldn't give you access to the stream, so you couldn't get fresh water. So actually it was really important to be palatable to other people and to not make people uncomfortable, because our survival depended on it. But society has grown exponentially. Our brains maybe haven't grown as fast, and so we still feel that need to make everybody comfortable.
Is that Sapiens? Would that
And
be
it was
Sapiens?
definitely a very lowbrow blog that I found. It was not a book.
But it's very true, right? We evolved to exist in communities of, say, 150 people, and now suddenly we are exposed to 7 billion or more. Mm-hmm. So I just wonder on that point, and perhaps this is the point, but it feels like your content does so well, right? And there's two ways in which your content could have gone down, right? The secondhand embarrassment for people watching could have been a real turn-off. I mean, logically, that makes sense, actually. It's the last thing I sort of want to watch in a weird kind of way, is someone putting themselves out there and embarrassing themselves and feeling that cringe, you know, from my phone screen. But at the same time, that's not what's happening. You've got this amazing following, and you're clearly showing and modeling something people really resonate and take a lot of value from, which we'll get into a bit later. But I'm wondering why you think your content resonates. Like, do we exist in a time where we all feel so much more susceptible to rejection than we have done previously? Or is it some other reason that you can think of?
I think my content resonates so much because we all have these inner thoughts of wanting to pursue stuff. It could even be posting yourself on social media or starting a new business adventure. As simple as wearing a new outfit that's been sat in your wardrobe but you're a bit nervous to wear. Yet a lot of us lack the confidence to do it because we're scared of judgment. And I think by me doing these challenges where maybe I go into the smoothie shop. So one I did yesterday is I went into a smoothie shop and I took my own banana and I said, please can I have this smoothie, but could I have it with my banana? And she was like, oh no, we can't do that. But by someone watching that video of me asking a bit of a silly, ridiculous request, hopefully it then gives them the confidence to, in McDonald's, ask for their own ketchup. Like, oh, you open your bag from your takeaway order and they've missed your chips, and it might be like, oh, it's fine, just leave it. Or your restaurant brings your food over and it's not what you ordered, and you say to your partner, oh, it's fine, just leave it. Hopefully, and I think this is why it resonates, by watching me do something outlandish and it going okay, that them saying, oh, you forgot my chips in my order, or I'm going to wear this new hat, gives them the confidence to do everyday kind of stuff. And I think that's the messages I get from people, which is very nice.
This is interesting, right? Because I didn't think of it as helping you actually advocate for yourself. For example, the I guess a really serious example of what your work could do is encourage someone at the doctor, for example, to say, but I would really like for you to do this test, or I need this thing, or no, it does hurt, even if you say that it's not a big deal. So the impact could be really serious. As much as you're doing a smoothie and a banana, they could be asking for a test that saves their life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm so glad you said that, because you've hit the nail on the head. That is exactly what it's about.
Finally, this is one of my favourite clips of all time from Move Over Mother Teresa. It's from the very first episode, an interview with Charlie Craggs. She talks about how when we're advocating for ourselves for something really good, sometimes it's okay to do it the bad way, the rude way, the impolite way, the sarcastic way, because there are other people doing it the good way. Why can't we be bad? You know, what if we need both types of people to move things forward?
There's something in it about being a bad trans person or a bad brown person, a bad woman, a bad gay, where we're expected to be like, you know, treated badly and then turn the other cheek, or like have it, oh, you should educate them. No, I don't now. And I think especially when because of now transphobia, people almost hold me to that, like, oh, it's such a shame that you don't educate people these days. I'm like, they're being mean to me. They're not like, they're not being ignorant. They're not like, oh, I've never met a trans person, I just want to ask you a question. They're like, no, you're a man, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I don't owe you an education, like, and that really annoys me. And like, I think there's something in being like I said, a bad trans person, a bad brown person, where you're like, no, like, f you too, bitch. Like, you know, like, if you were to be like, look at your pasty skin, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to turn around and be like, no, I'm a beautiful brown woman and you should educate yourself. Like, no, you can literally go lower than them.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm just like, I'm not trying to teach them anything. I'm trying to teach you, don't mess with me is what I'm trying to teach you.
So that is the purpose behind what you're doing. That's the message, is like, don't with us. And I think we need more. I'm just so, if I'm honest, I'm going to say it. I feel like so many trans people, specifically, like, there's a lot of trans people in the media who are so like, goody that I'm like, we need the bad girl, and I'm gonna be the bad girl. Like, we need a bit of both. Like, we need the ones who are like, oh, and then I'm like, we just like, you need. Yeah,
I
there
think
are
in all
multitudes
kind of civil rights
community.
movements, you've seen like there'll be the people who do it the correct way in the eyes of, like, you know, the mainstream, and the people who do it the bad way. But when you're both pushing, you're essentially like you're pushing it further. Like, I think that's what we need both of. We need people to realize, no, you can't with us, as well as please don't us. I think you need a bit of both.
Bit of MLK, bit of Malcolm.
I was going to say that and I wasn't sure if that's my place. I was like, I hope that's not offensive for me to say.
It's okay, I'm glad the white man said.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like that's very much how I feel about myself. Like, I'm not going to do it in their eyes the right way, but in my community eyes it's the right way. And I think is what we need. And we need people who are like, they're like really inspirational. And then we need people like me who are going to be like, no, I'm not taking shit. Like, you're not going to treat me like that.
And full transparency, actually, you've really changed my worldview on this, because
Same,
you know,
if I'm honest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I have such a natural adoration for things like nail transphobia.
Yeah,
like where again, coming back to words like grace and civility and, you know, bridging, and just just how perfect that feels, right? And I'm so fascinated that you've gone on this tonal shift towards clapping back, and you've just explained perfectly why. My fear is all the obvious fears that you'd think people would have, is that, you know, you fight in some way rage with rage, and there's like a little race to the bottom going on. But I totally respect why you do it, and why I think what you do is okay is because of the humor. It's like the satire, it's the parody, it's the way you do it. Like, there's an art to clapping back, which I think you nail.
You have nailed that.
If all you were doing was like anger and shame back.
Or starting on people. The hint
course,
is in the
right?
word back, clapping
Yeah.
back. I never just clap. I don't go out to the street and be like, stupid straight,
Of
this
course,
man,
yeah,
ugly.
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
I
yeah.
never do that. You would never catch me like, I'm not a bully.
Of course.
But I will bully the bully.
Yeah. Of course, right? So that's important. And what's also important, right, is that I realize that these kind of views I have are just come from a place of total privilege, and that, like, day to day, my biggest concern is how ethically sourced my coffee is, like, in comparison, right? And so it's all well and good for someone like me to say exactly what you know, what society says, which is, to a certain degree, this version of turn the other cheek, and you know, so
Or model minority, which was a big thing back when. Like, you got to be the model
polite.
minority.
I will say, don't play yourself down though. Like, I've got a friend who's a really respected activist called Sarah Corbett, who is kind of the mind behind, she calls it gentle activism, and she's like does craftivism. That she's really she runs a class of craftivist collective, and she's just finished her masters at Royal College of Art, and I went to her like final like presentation on it, and she's doing this new book from it, and I'm the complete antithesis of her. We're like such good friends. I'm like, it's just like Wicked. It's like the complete opposites, where she's like, and I'm in the audience and she's like, because you know, like, you don't get rage and fire doesn't get anything for it.
And then everyone looks at you.
No, I literally was like, but no one knew who I was there, thank God. But like, point being, like, I can still totally respect, like, she has respect for that. I'm not saying, I don't know if she thinks we need both, but I do think we need both. And I think it's not invalid to think like that, like, because I know rage and fire versus fire doesn't make anything but fire, but I'm actually fine with that, because guess what? If I'm getting burnt, you're getting burnt too. But I do understand that, like, people like you or like her who are like, you can actually get more. She's right. You can get more from it, more good from it, if you do come at it from another way. She does these like amazing kind of things where she, like, I don't know, like, where she did like this thing with the hanky thing, where like M&S were like not paying their cleaners a fair wage, and then she had her whole collective of craftists hand stitch hankies saying don't blow it, and sent them, and they went to like the M&S conference for the like all the leadership, and they handed them saying like, please, and they had a note with it being like, oh, please up the wage, and they did it, and it got something. Whereas if I'd come in and we were like, screaming, it's not going to get anything. But I think in different moments, like, I don't go into spaces like that and scream, and I do understand why some people would, but my thing would be like, if I'm in the street and someone calls me like a mean name or spits on me, I'm not going to be like, this is a learning moment, and I'm going to like, no, there's times that my approach works, and there's times that works, but I think it's totally valid as well.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of Move Over Mother Teresa, for clicking on the show and giving it a chance when you knew nothing about it, or probably us. If you do know any other creators who are purpose-led, who have a message to share that's meaningful and a method that's subversive, please head over to Instagram at Move Over Mother Teresa and let us know who they are. We'd really love to connect. Bye.